This is the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we teach you the proven methods to grow your seven-figure business to 10 million and beyond. Please welcome your host, Brett Gilliland.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast. As you know, every week we bring in guests who have great insights for the seven-figure growth journey. And today is no exception. We have Tim Francis with us. Tim is founder and CEO of Great Assistant. And I've known Tim for the last 2.5, 3 years, and I'm thrilled to have him as a guest today. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tim.
100% my honor. Thank you to be here.
So we get to have an especially great conversation today about a topic that I know most business owners wrestle with at some point in their scaling journey. And it's one that I have some personal experience with, but I'm going to try not to speak up a ton because I want everybody to hear from you. You're the expert on this, Tim. Let's start with this as some context. Most business owners just will their business forward at the start, right? They start this thing up, they're doing everything, all the hats, all the stereotypical things that we always talk about. And then at some point, their business gets big enough to where they say to themselves, I need some help. I got to hire someone. And sometimes that's an assistant. Sometimes that's not an assistant. Sometimes that's a salesperson or a marketing person or a product or service person. However they build their team, at some point in time, the business owner has to decide, do I keep doing everything that I've personally been doing? Or is it time for me to get an assistant? And so you've seen this hundreds, if not thousands of times with business owners over the years. And I would love for you to dissect a little bit, maybe the puzzle or the challenge or the decision that a business owner is going through when they're trying to figure out, is now the time for me to get an assistant? So I'd love for you to give any additional color to that situation that you think would be helpful. And then let's start to talk about the practical ways that they can think through that decision about whether or not it's time to get an assistant.
Wonderful, wonderful. So my team and I, we've helped hire assistants for over 500 entrepreneurs. And many of those entrepreneurs have actually gotten multiple assistants from us. As their business grows, sometimes the assistant now needs an assistant. Sometimes the entrepreneur will say, I've got a high performer in my salesperson or my chief of operations. They're getting stuck in the weeds. They need an assistant as well. So we've seen wonderful journeys for clients going from maybe somewhere in six figures up into multiple seven figures, and they actually become Inc. 5000 award winners because they're able to scale not just revenue and customers, but also team and production. And that's oftentimes where our team will come in. And in my experience of watching that happen for multiple of our clients, and then also my own experience of I myself failed with my first 5 assistants, one after the other, 5 in a row. My mom always called me an overachiever. And then for the last 9 years for myself, having had an incredibly good experience with my last 2 assistants, there absolutely are some patterns. And I think that if we were to start at kind of like the highest level, I think that a lot of entrepreneurs think about an assistant as an expense. They think of an assistant as a non-revenue generating expense, where in an entrepreneur's brain, my former self included, I would think, well, I can justify spending 80 grand, 100 grand on a salesperson because they're going to help me drive $1 million in revenue or something like that. That A to B connection is extremely clear. What I realized, there were a constellation of realizations I had that took me from struggling and exhausted to happy, fulfilled, and really feeling free, really, in my business for the first time, was when I realized that my assistant, yes, they will always be an expense, but my relationship with my assistant is the greatest profit center of my entire life. And to go beyond just profit center, I think it's crucial that we ask the right question. If the question is, how do I get an assistant? Anybody could go on Upwork.com or ask 3 entrepreneur friends or on Facebook, anywhere, and just say, looking for an assistant who's got a referral. And within literally 15 minutes of going on to Indeed or Upwork or somewhere else, you literally could have someone apply and you could have an assistant. My stand is that likely you wouldn't be satisfied if that was the entirety of our hiring process. And that's because I don't think most entrepreneurs are actually looking to get an assistant. That's the best language that my former self had, and that's the best language a lot of entrepreneurs have. I think deep down inside, though, what entrepreneurs are really looking for is, how can I get someone to help me spend the maximum amount of time in my day-to-day working in my zone of genius, and creates the freedom, not just of time, but also of mind share, that I can focus on what matters most, even beyond the four walls of my business. And I have to tell you that when I see that light bulb switch on for an entrepreneur, it's like 1,000 other questions just suddenly become irrelevant or fully solved once we're thinking about the relationship with our assistant as being a vehicle towards fulfilling our potential, fulfilling our calling. Yes, to be a great CEO or leader in our business, but also to be an A+ performer in our families, maybe in our faith communities, maybe even for ourselves in fitness or wellness or wherever it is that we're looking for. I've been asked many times, hey, Tim, so what kind of assistants do you hire? Do you hire executive assistants or personal assistants or marketing assistants or office assistants? What is it? My view is it's not even the right question in the first place. I mean, no disrespect. I just think the more productive question is, how can we optimize you as the entrepreneur to be fittingly an elite entrepreneur? Great name, by the way, Brett. Well chosen.
Thank you.
So to me, I think we can take any number of analogies. It's like back in the day, what was the greatest good Michael Jordan could offer? Was it filling out a bunch of paperwork and doing the laundry and whatnot? No. He was inspiring far more people by doing public appearances. He was producing far more entertainment revenue by working on his jump shot and competing for the Chicago Bulls. He was generating far more enterprise value for Gatorade and Nike by being in their commercials. Now, that may seem far-flung. There's only one Michael Jordan, or if we want to take a more recent version, one LeBron James or whatnot. But I think maybe even a more everyday example would be like a surgeon in the room. Like there's a surgeon in the operating room, and then there's the nurse, and there's the phlebotomist and the anesthesiologist, if I'm saying that word right. There are all these different people playing different roles. Now let's ask ourselves, is the world a better and healthier place if that surgeon has the headspace and the time in their calendar to do one surgery per week, or if they're able to do like 5 surgeries a day? So to me, it's not about the nurse work is grunt work or bad work or beneath the surgeon. It has to happen. If the nurse work doesn't happen, if the janitor work doesn't happen, if the finance department work doesn't happen, if the person ordering the cautery equipment and the cotton swabs isn't doing their part, the surgeon cannot do their job. And so I think it's actually an ultimate respect for the totality of the work that has to happen for this symphony to occur that is our business. And from that view of respect and appreciation is to step back and say, what's my most appropriate contribution to this team and to this symphony, to this operating room, such that the totality of my organization is doing the highest and best good that it possibly can. And the same is true in our families, and the same is true kind of in all areas of our lives. And if we start standing in that place of high performance, I think very quickly we realize the extraordinary opportunity cost if we are doing anything other than the surgery itself. If you are prepping the surgery room, you are not doing surgery. If you are doing paperwork, you are not doing surgery, and on and on and on. And, I've heard entrepreneurs before say like, well, my business isn't big enough to have an assistant, or that's only for rich people, or that's only for Fortune 500s. And my view is, whoa, hold the phone. Do you realize that you are the number one asset, not just in your life, but also in your business and in your family? Like you are the Michael Jordan, or you are the surgeon. And again, that's not a comment on social status or personal value or anything like that. That's just the workability. That's just the nuts and bolts of what it means to be a leader inside of your company. And you betcha we have more happy customers, and the world is a better place when you can focus on your talents. And let's also add, you're not burnt out.
I love that ad, Tim, because I mean, the surgery analogy is fantastic, but if you want to bring it home really quickly, you think about all the things that entrepreneurs do to keep their business going, and the burnout cost on that is huge. It's absolutely huge. You and I talked about this a little bit, but May 16th of this year, I hired my great assistant. Her name is Callie. She's fantastic. And it totally changed everything for me. So for me to put up with or live with the reality that I was living for several years before I made that leap, I just look at myself now and say, I should have done that sooner. Like it's not even a question. I should have done that sooner. And so I'd like to circle back. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I'd like to circle back and have you review with all of us, what are some of the reasons that smart entrepreneurs, very value creating entrepreneurs, are delaying the decision to get some help? Why?
Well, I'm going to answer that two ways. First is we literally did a survey of 149 entrepreneurs in 2019, and we said, what is your single biggest frustration or challenge in getting an assistant? So I'll tell you the results of that survey, and then I'm going to tell you what's sitting underneath all of that. Okay,
that sounds great.
So first and foremost, there were 6 areas. This is a little while ago, so forgive me if I don't remember all 6. The 6, we call them the big 6 reasons that entrepreneurs struggle with getting an assistant. Number 1, I don't know how to trust or let go of control. Number 2, I don't know what to pay them and how to make them profitable. Number 3, I don't know how to, or I don't want to, actually is the word. I don't want to train or deal with onboarding them. Number 4 was I don't want to have to manage them, babysit them, fix their mistakes. Seems like I should just do it myself. Number 5 was I don't know where to find them, specifically the good ones and the great ones. And number 6 was I don't know what to delegate. Now, Brett, I'll let you guess. Of the 6, what do you think was far and away the number 1 of those 6?
Well, if I had to guess, I would say the lack of being able to let go, right? Like, this is my thing. I created it. I don't even know how to think about somebody else doing this or trust that somebody else could do it as well as I do it.
1,000%. 98.7% of our 149 respondents had one or many of the big 6. And of that 98.7%, it was like 55 or 60%. So half of everyone all had the very first issue, control and trust. And let's face it, you're going to be more skilled at what you do right now in the exact unique way you do it and the way you like the documents to show and the thing in your calendar and the email and on and on and on. Of course, you've spent 10 years, 15 years, 20 years developing your preferred way of doing things. Of course, no one's going to step in on day one and do it the way that you like it and do it as well that you do it and do it as fast as you do it. Of course, if that's the metric for success, it's dead on arrival. Don't even bother getting an assistant.
Yeah. Okay. So if that's the fact, how do we get to the other side of it where it actually, where we have people going, man, that's the best decision I ever made? Because I know you've had hundreds of satisfied business owners, satisfied entrepreneurs thanking you for helping them get to the other side of it. So we know one side of it. I can't imagine being able to relinquish control. Or, man, that's frustrating to think that I would have to carve out time in addition to all the other stuff that I still got to do. I got to carve out time to hire this person and train this person. Like, it just feels so heavy to do it all. How do we get to the other side where it feels like, oh, I can't believe that was the best thing I ever did. Why didn't I do it sooner?
To me, once an entrepreneur, and Brett, I'm including my former self in this group. And you, okay. Yeah. I didn't want to speak on your behalf, but I had a feeling.
I'll volunteer that. Yes.
Once and only once an entrepreneur has an incredibly candid conversation with themselves about the crippling opportunity cost of not having an assistant, then and only then does an entrepreneur get into the incredibly resourceful state that we entrepreneurs are known for. When we want to make something happen, heaven and earth moves. When someone says to me, I don't have the time to get an assistant, to onboard them, to train them, et cetera, I'll say, I'm okay with your conclusion that it's not time to get an assistant. I will not agree with your language. In that they're a little taken aback. Well, what's wrong with my language? I'll say, it's not that you can't find the time, it's that you're not willing to make the time. And as long as someone is not willing to make the time, nothing's getting done. And I don't mean just getting an assistant, but if you've thought of writing a book or training your salespeople better or sitting down with your family to talk about succession plans or anything, you're never like, There are no extra pebbles of minutes in any entrepreneur's life where we're just like bored and like looking for something to do. That like kind of doesn't happen. Entrepreneurs are creative and moving forward. And as a group, we're always like the next big thing, the next thing. You're never, ever going to find the time for anything that's important. You will make the time. All of this came into sharp focus for me, Brett, because I myself had a health crisis where after a couple pretty hard business failures, I developed a stress-related illness and I couldn't walk for 3 months.
Wow.
Had it not been for the full-time care of my family and my own mother paying my mortgage for me for 3 months, I would have gone double bankrupt in my personal finance and also in my business. Talk about a wake-up call.
You're a fit guy. I mean, anybody listening to this wouldn't see that. I mean, you're a fit guy. And I know you're a collegiate athlete, like you're a healthy guy. And to picture you, and you're a young guy still, and back then even younger, to picture you laid out in the bed for 3 months, unable to walk, like that underscores the severity of it for me. That's incredible.
If you would have looked at my blood markers from the doctor, they'd say, oh, perfect bill of health. If you'd have looked at my body mass index for how much fat I was carrying, top 5% person, in America or Canada. If you were to look at almost any marker except for sleep volume, which was like 4.5 hours a night, 5 hours a night, or stress levels, like a self-reported stress report. If you look at anything other than those two, you'd be like, this guy's in great shape. He's good for the next 30 years kind of thing. And it all went away overnight. Now, that's not to say that it takes literally a crippling illness to be a wake-up call. In fact, I hope this conversation Brett and I are having can be your wake-up call. That you don't have to get to the point that you cannot provide for yourself or others before you realize that stress and exhaustion is a major chronic issue in our society, but especially in entrepreneur culture. So don't let it get that far. Don't do what I did, do what Brett did, where Brett took an honest, candid assessment of where he was at. And he said, okay, it's time to do it. And I'll tell you, Brett, that probably at least 3/4 of our clients who are running around with their head cut off and saying, oh, I don't have time to do all this, onboarding and training and whatever. They decide, despite that, I'm still going to get an assistant and I'm going to find a way. And they bring that entrepreneurial creativity and drive and determination. I bet you within 90 days, at least 75% of them are saying exactly what you said, Brett, which is, why didn't I do this 5 years ago?
Yeah. And celebrating the day. Like I walk around saying May 16th. That was, right? I mean, I know the day, May 16th. And Callie gets a kick out of that, right? I'm always bringing it up because, every business owner that I know who's trying to create a great business understands the power of leverage. You talk about a huge point of leverage. Any minute that you can free up from your own self and hand off to somebody else is a leveraged minute over and over again, especially if it's a repeatable type of thing, right? Whether it's daily or weekly or monthly, as soon as I hand that off, that's freed up every day, every week, every month for the rest of this arrangement, as long as this goes. And it's so amazing that it's like the gift that keeps on giving. So I'm a strong proponent for doing this. But it's so hard when you're in the moment. You're like, but that money's got to come from somewhere. And you think about it's like an expense, like you said. And so now I'm giving myself a pay cut to bring this person on. But as soon as you start doing those higher value activities, there's more revenue, more profit, more whatever that comes from making the investment. But it's so hard to see it, Tim. So hard.
Okay. So let's do a thought experiment. This is for everybody. If you cannot make a business case, for how your relationship with your assistant could be profitable in 90 days, don't get an assistant. There are other things you need to fix in your business first before we accelerate things by adding an assistant or we optimize things with an assistant. I like to see that an entrepreneur has customers they could go to resell, that the entrepreneur has, products they could launch, that the entrepreneur has, whether it's a speaking opportunity or some kind of client acquisition opportunity that, is kind of sitting unfulfilled. Like if an entrepreneur, if their business is less than $100,000 a year, which may sound tiny to some listeners, it's just too early. Like you need to learn more about building acquisition and building revenue and margin and cash before we throw an assistant into the mix. if someone if their business is doing at least six figures and up, like seriously, it's time to be thinking about how do we get an assistant involved? And to me, it's both an emotional exercise and also a mathematical exercise. So the first part is the mathematical exercise. And I think the emotional exercise is starting to confront what are some of my limiting beliefs here. As I mentioned, oftentimes entrepreneurs, once we get present to the opportunity cost of not having an assistant, all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, you mean I missed out on this $20,000 opportunity here? And you mean I could have picked up my kids from soccer practice? And you mean I didn't have to stay in the office dealing with that curveball all night right? What it all comes down to, actually underneath it all, is an entrepreneur's self-confidence in themselves, like their sense of self-worth. I think that, if a surgeon had some of the words going in their head, or if Michael Jordan had some of the words in their head that a lot of us entrepreneurs have around getting an assistant, they would never be where they are. I think to be a high performer, we have to, look at the outside world, but the inside world as well. Now, here's the thing. I'm not going to ask anybody to completely update their psychology just to get an assistant. Sometimes that's some of the hardest, longest, slowest work. Sometimes it comes in an epiphany or whatnot, but so here's the thing. If you're not willing to do it for yourself, do it for others. Do it for your loved ones at home that get to see more of you, that get to know that you're not going to burn out, that you're going to be around for them physically for many, many years to come. Do it for your staff, who know that they now have a calmer leader, a leader who can think more clearly and sharply about the business because the mental RAM has been lightened. The leader who has time to get away from the business for a couple days per quarter, knowing that their email's handled, their calendar is handled, that the trains are going to keep running on time. Business may not grow a bunch in your absence, but it's certainly not going to die either. A leader that can get that space to do deep thinking, deep work, to spot where this business really has to go in the coming 90 days, in the coming year, maybe even the coming 5 years. Do it for your customers who are now going to have a better customer experience because they're buying from you and your team, who are that much better led, that much better available to implement the elite entrepreneur methodology and tools and tactics and spreadsheets and everything that Elite offers. When you can lead with excellence, you're not just building great product or service, you're building a great business. And that great business has great people who are supported in every sense of the word. And you betcha that the goodness that puts into the world is at a completely elevated level. Do it for those constituents, even if you're not willing to do it for yourself.
Yeah, well said. I think it was easy for me personally, as I look back on my own journey with this, easy for me personally to sort of defer help to myself. And you've said that in a different way. Like, we sort of neglect ourselves as entrepreneurs. We're looking out for the business. Maybe we're trying to look out for a family we're taking care of, or other people we're involved with in the community or a church or wherever else, but it's all other facing. We just sort of grin and bear it, or we grind, or we sleep deprive ourselves to make more room for other things. And we put it off because we think, I don't really need that personally. But we do need that, but you don't understand it until you experience the contrast. But I like what you said. If not for yourself, do it for all these other people who could use more of you and or a better version of you when you are showing up for them. So well said. Wow, Tim, you've given our listeners a lot to think about with respect to whether or not it might be the right time for them to get some help, or the reasons why they should consider it again if they have sort of written it off. Why don't we, in just the last couple of minutes that we have, why don't you tell us, let's say we make the decision to go ahead and get an assistant. And, now these people know there's such a business called Great Assistant. You can actually help them find a great assistant. That part of it is very useful. Why don't you talk to them about what a good routine looks like, either daily or weekly, once you have one, to help to start to offload things from your plate to theirs. Like, call it onboarding, call it training, whatever you want to call it. What's a good rhythm for making this work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's a lot of science to it, or let's say methodology. It's not some grand mystery. Kind of like, in the elite entrepreneurs methodology, there's like quarterly planning that we do. It's kind of predictable in terms of what that looks like. So I think that at every level, whether we're thinking about daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly. Obviously, we're a little constrained with time today for me to be able to go into all of them, but I'm happy to maybe give you a few pieces. So first of all, I think in terms of daily interaction, ultimately, we don't want to be chasing or feeling like we have to babysit our assistant, and nor do they particularly want to feel like you're like breathing down their neck. So it sounds simple, but I wouldn't underestimate the power of it. Is the power of a daily report that your assistant submits to you each day that they work. And that report is going to cover 4, maybe 5 questions. The first question is, what did you do today? The second question is, where did you get stuck? Third is, what can I do to help? The fourth is, what are you doing tomorrow? And then if you have an hourly person, the 5th question might be, did you log your time today? Just as a forcing function. Okay. Mm-hmm. When you think about the cycle time, if you are only meeting with your assistant once a week, you have 52 cycles for them to improve and get better and move forward. On the other hand, if you meet with your assistant, if you get a daily report from them every day, it's lightweight, it's not super detailed, but the highlights, you get probably 220 cycles where you have an opportunity to make sure that they're clear on what they should be doing tomorrow. They're aligned with you on what should happen tomorrow. You're unbottlenecking them from whatever that they may have bumped into from the day. And you're creating that psychological safety that they know that they can come to you. A bit of a nuance is, I do think that where did you get stuck and how can I help you are 2 different questions. Yes, how can I help you may be building on where did you get stuck. However, how can I help you might also be, hey, when's the next team quarterly planning, for example, right? So it is its own question. And then what did you do today just creates like a nice little bit of accountability. And especially if you're in a remote situation where you and your assistant are not working in the same office, it can be kind of like a nice way for us as entrepreneurs to start calming down that sense of like, I don't want to let go of control. I don't know if I can trust someone. Well, if I'm getting a report every single day and I'm seeing that they're getting better and if they're improving, they're moving forward, they're getting things done, that's one of many strategies that we have to help an entrepreneur feel like, yes, they can actually start to trust more and more their assistant. So that would be a really great daily structure that we recommend to all of our clients.
Well, I appreciate that answer, Tim. I recognize after I asked the question, I asked a big question, right? That you're like, yeah, we could talk about daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. And you took my too large of a question and you brought it right down to a very practical, here's something people can do that'll help them feel more comfortable handing things off, and keeping that visibility on a daily basis is a great and practical suggestion. So thank you for that. Well, we've gone from trying to help people overcome some emotional challenges around the idea or the decision to get some help in the form of an assistant, all the way through to a very practical way that you can start to hand some things off and feel like the things are happening that need to happen and slowly relinquish that control. I really appreciate all of the perspective that you've brought to this issue, Tim, and just want to thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you for trusting me with being able to speak with both you, Brett, and everyone who's listening. It's part of my journey to help those that I come in touch with to fulfill their fullest potential, to make good on the gifts that each of us has been given, both by the divine and also by our communities, including the parents that helped us grow and our mentors and whatnot. Life is a precious thing. And so to be able to maximize the opportunity and the gift that is every single day is what's on my heart. And being able to be here today talking about how an assistant can help on that journey is definitely in alignment with my mission. So thank you, Brett. And I know that you do tremendous work. You and your team do tremendous work to help fulfill the potential of entire companies. And so I salute you for that.
Well, that's wonderful, Tim. Will you please let people know the best way to learn more about Great Assistant or connect with you?
Yeah, by all means. You can check us out at greatassistant.com. That is Great Assistant, all one word. No S on the end. It's singular. So greatassistant.com. And you can also email me personally, tim@greatassistant.com. Just know that if you're going to send me personal information, my assistant does read all of my email before I ever see it. So just know that you'll probably hear from Denise first. And if it is something that's ultra confidential in the subject line, just make a note like for Tim's eyes only or something like that. And she'll make sure that it stays confidential just between you and I.
All right. Again, thank you for being our guest today. For those of you listening, please share, like, review, do all that stuff so that we can help as many seven-figure business owners as possible with the content like we've shared today with Tim's help. We want to help as many elite entrepreneurs as possible build meaningful businesses. And so we want you to keep listening, keep growing your businesses, tell others about it, and we'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast with your host, Brett Gilliland. Be sure to leave a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. You may also want to visit our website, eliteentrepreneurspodcast.com, to find additional resources to grow your business from 7 figures to 10 million and beyond.